the moments in life that have been the most stressful, the most demanding, the most intense have been the moments where God has showed himself to me in the most astounding ways.
All right, so I'm here with Keith Temple. Keith, for those of the guys who may not know who you are, can you tell us just a little bit about who you are, your family, what you do for work?
Sure. I have been in the Northern Virginia area for about 25 years. I'm married to a wonderful wife named Jo. We've been married for 40 years, and we've got two kids, Leslie and Keith Allen. Leslie, my daughter, lives overseas and has two baby girls that have made me a real happy grandfather. And then my son and his wife live here in the Northern Virginia area. I work for Verizon. I've been there for almost 5 years, and I work in enterprise technology sales. I manage a large federal set of accounts, legislative branch, international banks, and so I have a very active and busy professional life as well.
I didn't realize you've been married for 40 years. That in of itself
40.
means that you have something to say to us. That's impressive. That's great. So was there ever a time in your life that you felt overwhelmed? And how did you kind of overcome that?
Yes. Not a time, many times. No, I think that I don't think there's anyone that can say they've just navigated life without being overwhelmed. I think being organized and having the ability to bring order to your world is helpful. I think that it can help eliminate stress. It can help in a lot of areas, but I don't think that it will ever enable a man or a woman to avoid moments where you're overwhelmed. And I think that's by design. I think that the Father will never allow us or wants us to be dependent upon our own abilities or our own skills or our own tools or whatever to navigate the tough areas of life. I think those are meant by Him to build character in us, to create a sense of dependency upon Him, and so yes, I'm frequently in situations in life where I feel overwhelmed.
And to me, that's incredibly encouraging because, I mean, most of us think of being overwhelmed as an inherently negative thing, but you're saying that actually can lead us to growing in our relationship with God, growing as a person in our character.
I think personally for me, the moments in life that have been the most stressful, the most demanding, the most intense have been the moments where God has showed Himself to me in the most astounding ways, and therefore has bolstered my faith and brought me to a place of a greater level of trust in Him. So yeah, and those are they're not pleasant. I don't care for them,
Right.
but I've learned over a long period of time that when those moments come, they're intended to drive me to a place of dependency on Him because He never fails.
Yeah. Amen. So you talked about just introducing yourself, just the number of different roles that you have, just as a husband, as a father, work, church. How do you balance all of those roles? Do you have some sort of like priority in terms of how you think about those roles of being a man?
Sure. So the single most important priority for me is staying connected to the Father and maintaining my intimacy with Him. I find that out of that relationship with Him comes the ability to be a better father, be a better friend, a better husband, a better coworker. Um, I heard a long time ago someone say that we should make the Father number one on the list of one, and that's always resonated with me because out of that relationship with Him and our ability to hear and to know His voice, when those moments in life come where decisions have to be made, priorities have to be made, the ability to hear God and to know His voice will enable us to navigate those times and be able to set the right priorities. So, it sounds good to say yes, God's number one, wife number two, kids number three, and that's a nice linear progression of priority. But I think when it comes down to life, it's not always that simple. And I I always want my knee jerk to be, God, what are you saying to me? What do you want me to do? Who do you want me to call? How do you want me to respond in this? And that only comes out of making the Father number one on the list of one.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So when it comes to just your typical day, can you walk me through what a typical day looks like for you in order to stay organized? And do you have like kind of more productive parts of your day that you prioritize?
Sure. So a day in the life.
Yeah.
I am a early to bed, early to rise guy. I've always been that way. So my day starts around 5 a.m. in the morning. And because I work from home, used to in my career, I'd get up, shower, shave, get dressed, put a suit on, drive an hour to work, work an 8-hour day, drive an hour home. And that's not been my life for the last, 5 or 6 years. I work from home, work out of a virtual office. And so it gives me probably 2 to 2.5 hours a day more time. And so I invest that time up front. So from 5 o'clock to say 8 o'clock or 8:30, I spend in my devotion time. And that always begins with time in the Word. That's the first thing. I had to learn that I can't, go into news or look at email or go into a YouTube video or whatever before I spend time in the Word. So I've built that discipline in my life up front. Then I'll spend, time. I typically like to take a walk, get some exercise in the morning when it's beautiful, when the weather's good. I have a little 4-mile run that I walk through my the area that I live in. It's secluded, it's private. I can pray out loud. I can raise my hands. I don't have to worry about anybody being there. And so those are real important times for me. And then my day consists of about 9 or 10 hours worth of work down in my office. And then at the end of a long day, I'll come upstairs, spend some time with my wife. My mother-in-law lives with us. We eat dinner together, maybe watch a little TV. But by 8 o'clock, I'm wore out. It's a struggle for me to stay awake till 9. So typically go to bed around 9 o'clock. But the most important time for me is the morning. That's the moment that really is special to me.
What about if I could just kind of hone in a little bit more on just like the work aspect? Because what I got from that is just the importance of the morning and prioritizing what is the most important, which is your relationship with God. But for your actual work day, do you have a more productive time where your mind is clear in, let's say, the morning or the afternoon? And so do you schedule things based on that or not so much?
It's hard for me because if you were to look at my calendar, you'd find very little white space left.
Okay.
There are just a lot of demands. I have typically on a typical day, I'll have anywhere from 5 to 8 meetings scheduled, conference calls, video meetings or whatever. And so I typically have to be on, kind of, all day. But for me, my most productive time is in the mornings when I first get started. I'm fresh. I've got that coffee, got that caffeine going, and so it tends to be the best time for me. And there's always those moments where in the day I might feel a lag or I'm low blood sugar or whatever, and I've got to. Sometimes what I do is I'll set a timer on my watch or on my iPhone to go off every 30 minutes. I'll get it from my chair. I'll walk up my driveway and walk back because I can find myself sitting in one place for 4 hours without ever even getting up. And so I have to remind myself to get up, get the blood flowing, move around. Or if I'm in a bad moment at work, I'll go pray. I'll walk up the driveway and pray. But that's typically the way it works for me.
That's helpful. Yeah. So how do you, in the midst of the demanding work schedule that you just mentioned, how do you really prioritize those relationships? Because I think every man feels that tension of like, okay, I know I have a lot of stuff going on at work. Maybe there's an impending deadline or project that you're working on, but you can't just shut down your relationships with, like, say, a spouse or your kids or those important relationships to you.
Right. Well, that's a great question. So, the one main relationship that I give priority to is my wife. I find that when things go south with Joe, my wife, life can get real messy, and I don't like it that way. So I've learned over 40 years that I've got to give her priority. Now she's the opposite that I was attracted to 42 years ago. She's a romantic, creative, extreme extrovert. I'm a pragmatic, perfectionist introvert.
Okay.
And so we're perfectly opposite.
Wow.
And and so that has created challenges. And so I've had to learn through a lot of mistakes, how to put her, keep her as a priority in a very busy world in which I live. And so it takes a lot of intention. It's taken a lot of sacrifice, a lot of dying to the flesh. But I've found a way to do that. But this is not an interview about marriage. So I also have other relationships with men that I've walked with going on 3 decades now. And I am very intentional about maintaining relationships with them. And it really is simple. It comes down to choice. What's important to you? What do you choose to do with your time? And then you find ways to make priorities for those things.
That's good.
Yeah.
Is there any verse or passage in Scripture that has inspired you as it relates to just organization and some of your priorities?
Well, prioritizing relationships, yeah. I think Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 and 25 has been instrumental in that area. It says, "Let us consider one another to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching." That speaks of priority to me, not forsaking, so much the more. It talks about priority of relationships, and I've lived by that in a lot of ways in my life. It encourages us to increase that as we see the day approaching. And in my Bible, the day is a capital D. That's a specific day in the future that could be coming more sooner than people believe. And so it drives me to prioritize relationships. We're living in a world where a global pandemic has changed life fundamentally for everybody. And it is separating and isolating people. It's doing exactly the opposite of what the scripture says. And so, isolation is a destructive thing. It's something that is used as a punishment. If you're in prison and you've done something wrong in prison, they isolate you. They put you in the hole. It's a punishment, and that's really what's happening to people here. So I think with regard to prioritizing relationships in life, I think that's been something that has influenced that. The other thing, too, is that Proverbs 18:1 says, a man who isolates himself seeks his own desire, his own self-interest, and he rages against all wise judgment. And so my priority in my life above work, above most menial things has been relationships with people I love. And that's what's influenced it.
That's really good. Okay, so some guys watching this maybe have no clue, just where to even start. I'm sure you'll have some people who are super type A who've got a lot of this figured out, but what kind of tools do you use just from a basic, you said you're a pragmatic type of person, so what are some of those organizational tools that help you?
So I'm a bit of a tech geek, and I've always been an early adopter. I can remember back in the 90s when our church was meeting at Huntmar Park. You were a wee lad back in those days.
I was like 10.
Yeah. I remember walking in church with a Palm Pilot
Okay.
and showing all my fellow elders my new gadget, and even Pastor Brett before he had his Palm Pilot.
Uh-huh.
Pastor Brett being our pastor, and so I've always been an early adopter. Because I work in the technology industry, I'm immersed in it.
Okay.
I've got 3 computers at home. I've got 2 iPads, 2 iPhones,
Wow.
an Apple Watch. They're all integrated. They're all synced. They all work to help keep order in my life. Almost too much order. Almost too much. My wife teases me sometimes and calls her my other girlfriend or whatever. My technology devices.
Right.
But I recognize that there are guys out there that may not be more technically oriented. They may be more mechanically oriented, and what I really believe is the most important thing when it comes to organization and when it comes to bringing order to your life is what I would call an intrinsic tool.
Okay.
And I think the most important thing is discipline. And so if you're not one who can, who wants to use electronic tools or digital tools, having the discipline to make a list, having the discipline to plan, there are ways to do that without having to use electronic tools. I think a good example would be somebody who wants to lose weight, who's overweight, and they want to lose weight. They can go out and find bazillion how-to videos on how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it really comes down to it, it takes the discipline to employ those techniques, to eat right, to exercise, to discipline your life, to get to that place where you achieve the goal. I think organization is exactly the same way. It takes intention, it takes determination, and it takes a lot of discipline. And I think that those are the tools. So I've got tools for everything. Finances, organizing every bit of digital data in my life. I've got tools for that. I've got tools for everything. But if someone's interested in that, seek somebody out. There's so much available to people to learn how to use some of these tools, and they're great. They're great things to have. It's an amazing day we live in that we have the ability to use these things to help us.
So if I had to just let's say I wanted to mess with your life, and I could take one of those tools away from you that would just disorient you, what would that be? Would it be like a calendar app or a to-do list app or something like that? Or what's one organizational tool you feel like you can't live without?
I'd probably say my e-wallet.
Okay.
And the reason being is because I have hundreds of passwords.
Okay.
I have every bit of data that makes my life work.
Yeah.
And if you took away my ability to access that information, I'd be hamstrung.
Okay.
And so it's encrypted, it's backed up, it's in the cloud, it's everywhere.
No one's going to take that away.
In case something happens to anything, it's on several. I protect that. So I think that'd probably be the one tool that would really hurt if I lost.
Okay, so how do you go about tackling some of the more dreaded things or the more boring things that you face as a man?
So I think that most people who are facing something that is difficult or they dread or they're bored by, I think that a lot of people tend to put off to the last moment to do those things. By nature, I'm not a procrastinator.
Okay.
I have learned over time that the stress that is produced by waiting until the last minute is so unpleasant for me that it is a extreme motivator for me to dive in and prepare early. I'm in a perfect example right now. I'm right now having to prepare for account reviews with executive leadership at Verizon. And this only happens once every about 2 years. And it's stressful. it's extremely stressful. And the job is busy in and of itself, but I started a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago. My reviews aren't until next week, so I gave myself a 3-week window to prepare, so that right now I'm 90% done, and I've got a full week to refine it, to work on it. And so I find that just jumping on something early for me helps me so much more. One of the things that I do with things that are difficult, things that I dread, is sometimes like at work, I'll employ my team to work on things with me. I'll call a conference call, or I'll get people on and say, hey, we got this challenge. Just need everybody here to kind of throw in and help us solve this issue. At home, when I've got projects, I think that including loved ones, friends to help. My son always called me, Dad, what do you got going around the house? What can I come help you with? And it's a great time to knock out a project that maybe you've just been delaying by spending some time with somebody you don't get to spend time with a lot. And it even offers opportunities to pour into someone's life, to disciple, to do those types of things. So there's a way around those things. You just have to try to be creative, and for me, it's about reducing stress.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point too, that something that might be more of a weakness or something that you don't enjoy, by including other people, it can be something that serves some other purposes, like building relationships, and then in turn they can help you out with something that's stressful.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
Yeah. So earlier on, you talked about just in the morning how you're very careful to not allow those distractions of YouTube and news and things like that. That for me personally is a real challenge, to not get distracted, to not find myself going to Facebook or YouTube or things like that. So is there anything that you found that kind of helps you in that discipline?
Sure. I think that most people in this world have experienced social media overindulgence. And it's something that can happen when you're not looking. It becomes so natural for us because we've always got these devices in our hands. We're always connected. And there's something very addicting about social media. So for me, I look for the signs. I look for the effects of too much. And if I'm feeling that if I'm feeling that there's been an imbalance there, I'll just pull back. And and I don't, I think that pulling back maybe looks different for other people. It could mean just limiting yourself to a certain part of the day to check out social media or whatever. For others, if it's obsessive and if it's controlling your life, I think you have to take a little more drastic measures. Uninstall the app, take it off your phone, whatever. I just think that we have to be sensitive to those things. Sometimes you may not even see the effects, but if you're in continual relationship with the Father and you're connected to Him, sometimes you'll hear the still small voice. Too much Facebook. Stay off YouTube. Don't watch that. And I think that you have to learn how to listen to that and to obey that. And for me, it's just looking for the signs and making those choices and those decisions to back away.
So for the guy who this is so unnatural, late to things, having a hard time balancing all the different balls, or keeping all the different balls spinning. What's the starting point? What's just like basic ground level? Here's step one for you.
I recognize that everybody's not pragmatic and not that don't necessarily have a knee-jerk propensity for extreme organization. There are those out there that are creative, that are fluid, that are unstructured. My son's a perfect example. He's exactly the different. My day, I can almost walk the same steps every morning. I'm very structured. And so there are others that are not like that. And I would say that the first thing that you should do is to ask yourself, do I need to make a change? Do I need more organization in my life? And if I answer my question and I do, then the first place I'd go is God. I would ask Him, help me. Send me an answer. Send me someone. Send me information or whatever. We live in the information age. We have access to so much how-to information. I mean, you can go onto YouTube and find 1,000 videos on how to organize your life. There are professionals out there that do it. And if you need help, seek it out, find it. A week or two ago, I was interested in maybe redoing my garage and rebuilding a workshop. And I found this video of this young guy that was so gifted, and he was using French cleats to hang his tools up. And I thought, wow, that is so cool. And I started envisioning, and I kind of got like, wow, this is what I want to do. It's a matter of just looking at those areas of your life and finding out where you can improve. I think for those who have a lot of disorganization around them, if they live in more of a completely disordered, chaotic world where there's a lot of clutter, a lot of mess, I think that you need to step back from the macro picture of your life instead of looking at the whole thing, and take one thing. Take one thing and just find a way to improve that one area. Maybe it's just your office. Maybe it's just, one little part of your whole world, and take a step. Take one step. Just do something. And I think that you'll find that, wow, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I feel pretty good about the result of that. And I'm hoping that I'll see some results, in my life that will play out, that will demonstrate that this is good for me. I would say one other thing. I would say that, like anything, you can go from one place in your life and let the pendulum swing, and you can go all the way over to the other side. I was raised in a home with a father who was an extreme perfectionist. And being raised in his perfect world, I received a lot of benefit, and I've inherited some of his, skills in organization and things. But I also experienced some of the negative sides of it. And I think that with anything, you can overdo something. You can over obsess. You can allow something to go from the place of being a blessing to it being something that is not a blessing. For me, I used to try to control my world and try to overcome so much stress or so much struggle in life by controlling my environment, and that can have negative side effects. You can impact negatively your relationships. You can drive people away from you. And so I would say that keep a balance, take small steps if you've never done it before, and be sensitive to God, and just allow Him to direct that.
That's really good. It's powerful. Keith, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us. I wanted to do the interview here. Those who are watching know where we are in a coffee shop. Those who are listening may not know, but we're at Aldi Country Store, a little old country coffee shop.
Yep.
And we meet here pretty regularly and sit down, and you've been had such a big impact on my life, just pouring into me. So thank you for the man that you are. Thank you for lending us your time and some of your organizational skills. It's going to make me better.
My joy, my pleasure.